as somebody who grew up as a gay person, I have a lot of personal experience of what it's like to be living in a world where you don't fit and you don't belong.
Right.
Okay. So that in and of itself is traumatic. You, from a very early age, even if nobody says anything, you're different. You see you're different. You don't look and act and feel like other people. So that in and of itself is a huge issue for people who are in the LGBTQ plus community. Okay. So there's that. It's becoming more aware. It's becoming more relevant, common, approachable, open to be talked about and discussed.
It's right out in front, right? It really is. I mean,
It's
kids
right
are
out
bringing
in
it
front.
out.
Yeah, they are. There's, it's interesting. You said parents 20 and below. This friend and colleague of mine, Joe Court, is somebody who writes a lot. You know, Joe?
Yeah.
He writes a lot about this issue, and he talks about the 40 over and 40 under category. So he says people over 40 are in a whole different world compared to people under 40 around LGBTQ plus. And I really, I happen to be one of those people who's in the over 40 crowd, right? And so there is this pre and post LGBTQ world, and people have very different views and perceptions of it. The other thing I'll say about that, so there is this education that people need to have, okay? People who just didn't grow up with this, people who don't even understand these terms, which we'll talk about more.
Right.
And this new generation of people that grew up with Will and Grace on TV, for example. It's like, there's a level of normalizing queer culture in a way that it wasn't before. So there's this movement, right? Which I think personally is wonderful. And I'll say, Keith, anytime a minority group comes to awareness and is more available to the general public, there's going to be backlash. And there's going to be what IFS calls a polarity. Okay. So of course you're going to have a group that's going to be like, hello, hi, I'm gender neutral. There's a pendulum swing to one direction, and always in any group, there's going to be a pendulum swing in the other direction. So
the openness and then the restrictiveness. Perhaps,
exactly. We've seen this with the women's movement. We've seen this with LGBTQ. We've seen this with Black Lives Matter.
Civil rights.
Any minority group that starts to get recognized, there's this automatic polarity that shows up. Right. And so for me, I think you're talking about that polarity right off the bat. And we can look at both sides, right? We can look at both sides. And interestingly enough, what I'll say is that's a cultural phenomenon to pay attention to. In my experience, Keith, it's very different than sitting with somebody in your office.
Yeah.
Like it's almost, it doesn't relate. Because when you're sitting with somebody in your office who's struggling with these issues, culture and society affects them, but it's not really what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a person.
So much more.
Yeah. Yeah. So you as a therapist, you have to hold the swing, the polarity, as well as the person who's internalizing both sides of that polarity.
Right. And I'm hoping today will help people who don't get a chance, like you and I do, to sit with others and do that deep listening and be able to see all of their parts, and especially those of us who are trained to look for parts of the personality. We should talk about IFS here and what it means, this idea of natural multiplicity, because that gives us a really special lens, doesn't it?
Yeah.